Democrats being led by Congressmember Jamie Raskin turned the tables on MAGA Republicans. MAGA Republicans wanted to hold this hearing to call out and attack Act Blue. Democrats use it as an opportunity to go on the offense against MAGA Republicans and say, where in the world is a witness from the MAGA Republican group Win Red, which quite literally has tens of thousands or perhaps more claims against it by Republican donors who say that they were scammed by Win Red? Why aren't we focusing on that? Congressmember Raskin lays it out, turns the tables, and I think it gives Americans a lot of hope that if and when Democrats take control of the House in these midterms, we'll have leaders like Raskin and Garcia and others who will be leading these hearings and actually getting to the truth. Watch Democratic Congressmember Jamie Raskin do his thing. Here, play this clip.
Preventing fraudulent donations, transparency, verification, and accountability. That sounds like a valuable inquiry to me. The problem is that, as we all know, that's not what the hearing's really about. If it were, our colleagues would have first demanded testimony from the CEO of Win Red, the fundraising platform that has generated hundreds and hundreds of serious fraud complaints from individual Americans, mostly Republicans, including a lot of elderly Americans and Americans with disabilities who say they've been robbed blind, hoodwinked by Win Red, in many cases fleeced out of their life savings. But the Republican chairs of our three committees have repeatedly refused to conduct any oversight or investigation into the Win Red platform that processes donations for over 7,800 GOP campaigns and committees across the United States, including all the GOP senators and 97% of GOP House members. Well, that's just not a serious approach to the problem. This hearing is really part of a political vengeance and vendetta campaign that yesterday came to the House Judiciary Committee in the form of a 4-hour hearing interrogating the president of the Southern Poverty Law Center. After the 2020 election, banks and credit card issuers estimated that Win Red fraud cases constituted as much as 3% of their total national fraud workload across all transactions. That is a shockingly large share, given that there are 150 million credit card transactions that American consumers and businesses engage in every single day in the country. Between January 2022 and June 2024, the FTC received more than 800 complaints about Win Red, nearly 7 times the number it got about Act Blue. In the final months of 2020 alone, the Trump campaign, RNC, and their shared accounts had to issue more than 530,000 refunds worth more than $64 million. That's more than 11 times the amount that the Biden campaign and the Democratic committees had to refund. And yet, who of the administration and our GOP colleagues focused on exclusively from the beginning Act Blue, the company that primarily processes contributions for Democratic campaigns around the country? Last April, the White House issued a presidential memorandum directing the AG and Treasury to, quote, use all lawful authority to investigate Act Blue, which, according to the White House, facilitated straw or dummy contributions or foreign contributions to political candidates and committees. But as Americans can see each day, every accusation by this administration is an admission, every allegation a confession, every charge a self-indictment. The arraignment of Act Blue is an admission about Win Red's continuing serious fraud against their donors. An Associated Press review of President Trump's political committees found more than 1,600 contributions from unverified donors who lived abroad, had close ties to foreign interests, or failed to disclose basic identifying information. Many of those contributions came through Win Red. AP reported that one Chinese businessman gave $5,000 to Trump through Win Red while listing a La Quinta Inn as his home address. Other contributions came from unnamed donors listing 999 Anonymous Drive as their address. Another series of Win Red contributions listed the donor's address as a vacant building in Washington that turned out to be a defunct funeral home. Where is all of the righteous outrage about these abuses? Where is the mobilization of taxpayer resources to investigate Win Red? Where is Attorney General Ken Paxton, who was impeached by the Texas House of Representatives for bribery, securities fraud, abuse of office, and obstruction of justice. Attorney General Paxton sued ActBlue in April, but his office has ignored complaint after complaint from Texas constituents about the allegations of fraud and abuse related to WinRed. Who were the victims of WinRed that Ken Paxton deliberately ignores? Well, one Texas woman tried to make small one-time contributions to Republican candidates that she supported. WinRed emptied more than $15,000 out of her bank account, including charging her account 29 times in one day. She wrote to Attorney General Paxton that she, quote, didn't realize they were sucking my life savings out of my bank account. He never even wrote her back. And if that's how partisan Republicans treat Republicans, you can imagine how they're going to treat everybody else in the country. You don't want me to discuss these other complainants?
The gentleman's time has expired.
Next up, I want to show you the Democrat ranking member of the House Oversight Committee here, Democratic Congress member Garcia, who also brings up the utter hypocrisy by these MAGA Republicans. Let's play this clip.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate being here. And I want to just begin by echoing, of course, Ranking Member Morelli and Ranking Member Raskin. Look, the biggest fraud in this country that we should be talking about is happening at the White House. We're not talking about the $1.8 billion slush fund. We're not talking about the clear selling or influence of pardons and what's happening at the White House. We're not talking about the $2 billion that Jared Kushner got 2 months after leaving the White House for an investment fund that's made no return. We're not talking about the possible Trump family pay-to-play schemes and scandals that are happening across the world as President Trump tries to do diplomacy and the Trump family follows up with real estate deals. We're here because Republicans want to talk about ActBlue, not because they're serious about strengthening campaign finance laws or actually strengthening the abuse of fraud in this country. Now, we should all support and work to strengthen security, prevent fraud, stop interference in foreign elections, and certainly if there are ways to improve platforms across this country, public or private, that should be the focus. But if Republicans were serious about that goal, they wouldn't be exclusively focused on ActBlue. They'd also be examining the WinRed platform with the exact same level of scrutiny. Now, a real investigation into WinRed would raise serious questions. The Trump campaign, as has been mentioned, through WinRed, has accepted thousands of contributions that reportedly lacked basic identifying information required under campaign finance law. Now, according to reporting, President Trump received more than 1,000 contributions that omitted key identifying information such as city, state, address, county, and he also received contributions from donors whose names were incomplete, listed as anonymous, or marked name not provided. So there are concerns. And sure, there are concerns about foreign source donations as well as it relates to WinRed. Now, one example involved a Chinese businessman whose contribution to the Trump campaign listed an address in La Quinta, California. Now, public records identified him as actually living in China and described him as a Chinese national. Now, if Republicans are concerned about foreign money in politics, they should be investigating those allegations with the same enthusiasm that they're bringing to ActBlue. But perhaps the most troubling allegations involving WinRed actually don't even concern foreign money. They concern WinRed victimizing American donors themselves. In fact, Republican donors, as was raised by Ranking Member Raskin. Now, CNN reported that there was one 82-year-old woman living in a modest Baltimore apartment who unknowingly gave more than $350,000 to Republican causes through recurring donations. Another donor, an 80-year-old Californian who later died of lung cancer, contributed more than $180,000 and just had $250 left in her bank account when she passed away. Now, these stories raise real concerns about WinRed's use of pre-checked recurring donation boxes and confusing solicitations that many consumers, seniors, and others have had a hard time understanding. Now, according to CNN, WinRed has been the subject of hundreds of complaints to the Federal Trade Commission, far more, by the way, than comparable complaints involving any Democratic fundraising platforms. Yet it's interesting that we're only focused on Act Blue. Now, WinRed also faced scrutiny over aggressive text messaging practices, and multiple state attorneys general have investigated its recurring donation policies, yet today's hearing ignores, of course, all of that. Because this is not a serious effort to improve campaign finance compliance. It is a partisan exercise designed to protect Donald Trump, to protect WinRed, and attack Democrats and political opponents. If the committee wants a real investigation into campaign fundraising practices, let's examine everyone. And let's follow the facts where they lead, not pretend to have some kind of investigation that only really is going after one side. With that, I yield back.
Finally, I want to bring to your attention Democratic Congresswoman Jaya Paul over in the state of Washington. She does a great job highlighting, I think, something that has really not gotten enough attention. Why is Donald Trump's so-called Board of Peace, when he's going to war with everybody, linked to a private secret JP Morgan Chase account? Why isn't this linked to some transparent thing where we know what money's going in, what money's going out? What in the world is this? By the way, at the same time, Donald Trump filed a lawsuit against JP Morgan Chase claiming that they debanked him. He's opening up bank accounts for this Board of Peace. Where's the money? And the professed purpose is what? To bring peace as Donald Trump supports genocide and engages in catastrophic and unlawful wars and kills little girls in the Manab Elementary School. What work are you doing other than at the Trump regime level, other than furthering the Gaza in the genocide in Gaza and in Lebanon? What are you doing? Here's what Congresswoman Jaya Paul says. Let's play it.
My amendment would require the Secretary of State to report to Congress on the status and amount of U.S. funding that has been sent to the Board of Peace, an accounting of how those funds have been used, and documentation of any civilian harm occurring at any Board of Peace site funded by U.S. taxpayers. Every day, month after month, we in America are witnesses to and complicit in the horrific genocide in Gaza. The population has been systematically starved, civilian infrastructure has been destroyed, and areas designated as, quote, safe have been bombed. Almost 73,000 Palestinians have been killed, including 20,000 children, and over 170,000 have been injured. Even by Israel's own statistics, which drastically undercount the number of fatalities, the IDF has killed more civilians than combatants. Nearly all Gazans have been displaced from their homes and communities, forced to repeatedly flee to often unsafe and unsanitary conditions. We have also seen the repeated and indiscriminate destruction of civilian infrastructure, including homes, schools, and universities, hospitals, religious sites, and farmland, meaning life in Gaza will never be the same. President Trump promised that he had the solution, and in January of this year, he created his so-called Board of Peace to supposedly oversee the reconstruction of Gaza and work toward a permanent political solution to this conflict. Nearly 6 months later, these promises are still unfulfilled. Palestinian civilians remain displaced without reliable access to food, clean water, medical care, education, or sanitation. And despite the so-called ceasefire put in place 7 months ago, the IDF continues its bombardment of Gaza. Just last month, the IDF killed 119 Palestinians, 30% of whom were either children, women, or the elderly, making May the deadliest month for Palestinians this year. The United States is Israel's largest supplier of arms, providing the government of Israel billions of dollars in military aid. We have been derelict in not applying our own domestic laws to these military shipments and ignoring international humanitarian laws. This makes us complicit in this destruction. We cannot just trust that President Trump's Board of Peace will produce results. We need an actionable plan, an accounting of what U.S. funds are being sent, how they're being spent, to ensure the human rights of Palestinians are respected, and that we never have another inhumane aid distribution system like we saw with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. In February, the U.S. reportedly pledged $1 billion in taxpayer funds to the Board of Peace, but recent reporting has confirmed that the board's account, managed by the World Bank, has $0 in it. That's right, 0. Supposedly, money has been deposited into a separate private JP Morgan account with absolutely no transparency. When asked about funding for the Board of Peace in front of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Secretary Rubio could provide hardly any details about the board's funding scheme and its strategy to fund reconstruction and promote durable peace. As Donald Trump repeatedly squanders American taxpayer dollars to further his own interests, whether it's through funding for his ridiculous ballroom or his $1.8 billion cop beaters slush fund, it is clear that congressional oversight is necessary. The American taxpayers and the people of Gaza deserve to know how this Board of Peace is being funded and where its money is going. I urge my colleagues to vote yes, and I yield back.
I wanted to show you those three, I thought, incredibly powerful moments. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear in the comments below. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.